Before we dive in, if you enjoy these first-person horror stories, hit like and subscribe to never miss a drop of dread. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight? I read every one, and it's wild seeing how far these tales travel. Now let's get into it. I was 3 miles out when I saw it, my brother's jacket. It was torn and crusted with dried blood, fluttering in the wind, snagged on a rusted highway sign like some twisted flag. I stopped walking. My heart didn't race. It stopped, just long enough for the silence to scream in my ears. Danny had been wearing that jacket yesterday when he left. He was supposed to be back by nightfall. He wasn't. And I knew exactly what that usually meant. I slid my pack off and crouched beside the sign. Blood trailed down the guardrail and vanished into the woods. I touched the fabric. It was still damp, fresh. He had come through here recently. I kicked the shopping cart I was pushing into the ditch. I wasn't looking for supplies anymore. This was no longer a run. This was a search. I pulled out my machete. The edge was still nicked from last week's fight in the tunnels. I stepped into the tree line. The air changed the second I left the road, heavier, still. Every step on broken branches felt too loud. I followed the blood deeper into the forest. Faint, messy, rushed. There were snapped limbs, a footprint in the mud, signs of panic. Then I saw it. A boot, his, half buried in leaves. My stomach dropped. He had lost it while running. That wasn't like Danny. He was careful, always careful. Nothing about this trail felt right, not the silence, not the signs he left behind. But I kept going. Because if he was out here, hurt, cornered, waiting, then I wasn't going back without him. And if I couldn't find him alive, I'd make sure whatever took him didn't stay that way. 18 months, that's how long it's been since the world died. I was working night shifts at a gas station when it started. 1 second, I was selling smokes to a trucker. The next, someone ran inside covered in blood, screaming that people were eating each other on the highway. No warning, no sirens, just panic, then silence. Then the screaming started again, and it never really stopped. I lost everyone in the first 2 weeks. My parents, my old friends, gone. Some ran, some fought, some turned. My younger brother Danny and I, we stuck together, always had. After the outbreak, we just kept moving, town to town, shelter to shelter, watching everything fall apart. It was luck that brought us to the firehouse, luck and a working radio. We picked up a broadcast one night, a voice listing coordinates and promising safety. We followed it, expecting an ambush or a trap. What we found was real. A red brick fire station turned fortress, heavy gates, solar panels, a working well, survivors who didn't shoot first, people who didn't just take. They let us in, gave us a cot, food, a purpose. That was nearly a year ago. Since then we've made it work. Everyone pulls their weight. Some tend crops. Some reinforce the walls. Some like me go out to scavenge. But Danny, he volunteered for supply runs. And he didn't just go out. He mapped every route, logged every trip. He learned how to avoid the dead and how to outsmart the living. He was fast, careful, smarter than me, even if I'd never admit it out loud. He became our best runner. So when we got word that the pharmacy 3 towns over might still have antibiotics, Danny stepped up, no hesitation. It wasn't even his rotation, but he volunteered. Said he had a shortcut he wanted to try. Told me not to worry, that he'd be back before dark. Just another run. That was yesterday. It's been 26 hours since he left. The rule at the firehouse is simple. If you're not back by nightfall, we assume you're gone, dead, turned, or worse. I couldn't accept that. Not with Danny. He's all I've got left. We may have found safety here, but the world outside is still chaos. And chaos eats people like him. People who believe things can still get better. People who smile when the rest of us have nothing left to smile about. People who walk out those gates without fear because they believe they'll always come back. But belief doesn't stop teeth. I asked around before I left. No one else had seen him. No one had heard from him over the radio. His last check-in was brief. Static in 2 words. Still moving. Then nothing. So I packed light. Just weapons, water, some gauze. I figured I'd follow his usual path. Look for markers. Try to pick up a trail. I didn't tell the others I was leaving. Didn't want the speech. Didn't want the pity. I just grabbed my gear and walked out at first light. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. That kind of quiet where even the flies seemed to hold their breath. I passed the burned-out school buses on Route 9. The flipped semi with the dried handprints still smeared on the cab window. Places I had passed before, but this time everything felt heavier. Like the world knew what I was doing and was already mourning the outcome. At first I didn't find anything. No sighs, no blood, no struggle. Just the same cracked pavement and whispering wind. I started to think maybe I was wrong. Maybe Danny had taken a completely different path. Or maybe he'd already made it back while I was out searching like an idiot. Then I saw his jacket. I knew at the moment I spotted it from the highway. The dark blue windbreaker. The patch on the shoulder from our dad's old work uniform. Danny never went anywhere without it. And now it was hanging from a road sign like a warning. Something happened to him out here. And I'll be damned if I just turn around and let that be the end of it. He might still be alive, hurt, trapped, hiding from something worse than the infected. Or maybe I'm already too late. Doesn't matter. He's my brother. I find him. Or I don't come back either. The woods swallowed the sound behind me. Once I left the road, the wind vanished. The air was still, too still, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. I moved slowly, keeping my footsteps light, eye scanning for signs. The blood trail was faint but there, smears on bark, drops on leaves, like Danny had been moving fast, maybe limping, or fighting. I found a torn strip of cloth tangled in a low branch, same fabric as his jacket. The tear looked fresh, no rot, no fade. My gut twisted. He was here, recently. I pressed forward, machete in hand, swinging it low to clear the underbrush. Every crack of a twig felt too loud. Every shadow looked like it might move. I kept going. 10 minutes, maybe 20. Then I saw something that stopped me cold. His pack. It was lying in a shallow ditch, half covered in dead leaves. One strap was torn clean off. The zipper was broken. I knelt beside it and opened it slowly. Empty, no meds, no food, just a blood-stained scrap of paper stuffed in the side pocket. No words, just a rough sketch. Arrows, landmarks, Danny's handwriting. A map. He was trying to mark something. I didn't know what yet, but it meant he was still thinking clearly when he dropped the pack. That gave me hope. And I heard the first groan. It was faint, just one, but that sound is burned into my bones. The slow, dragging death rattle. Not close, but not far either. I turned and crouched low, listening. Then I saw them. 3 of them, maybe 4, moving through the trees. Not fast, not fresh. The slow ones, rotted, limbs stiff, skin like dried leather. Their eyes were cloudy, but their heads turned toward me all the same. I backed up slowly, keeping my breath steady. I didn't want to fight, not here, not with more possibly nearby. But one of them caught the scent. It let out a wet howl, and the others picked up pace. I ran. Branches snapped against my face. My boots slid in the mud. I jumped a log and turned sharply, trying to lose them. But more came, from the left, from behind. Maybe a dozen now, all converging on the noise. I couldn't outrun them forever. I spotted a crumbling cabin through the trees and made for it, door hanging loose, windows shattered. I threw myself through the frame and slammed the door shut behind me. The latch broke. I shoved a cabinet in front of it and backed away. The groans were right outside now. Fingers clawed through the broken slats. A rotten arm reached inside. I swung the machete and took it clean off. The cabin was small, one room, a cot, a rusted stove, dust thick enough to choke on, but it would buy me time. I scanned the room. That's when I saw it, on the floor near the far wall. Footprints. Fresh. Danny's boots. I knew the tread pattern. I had patched those soles myself. He'd been here, recently, maybe even hours ago. I moved to the far corner where a loose floorboard sat askew. I pried it up and found something inside. A notebook, water-stained, torn, but I recognized the handwriting. Danny's journal. I flipped through it quickly. Most of it was route logs and supply counts, but then I found a page dated yesterday. Met someone on the road, it read. Said they came from a settlement out past the industrial zone. Claims they have clean water, working generators. Too good to be true. But if it is real, maybe it's worth the risk. He had underlined one line. Don't follow unless I don't come back. I stared at that sentence for a long time. He knew it was dangerous, and he went anyway. He always believed in second chances, even when the rest of us stopped. The pounding on the door snapped me out of it. The dead were getting through. The cabinet cracked. I grabbed the notebook, shoved it in my pack, and moved to the back window. I kicked it out and dropped into the brush below. Didn't wait to see if they followed. I just ran. The map in my head shifted. The trail didn't end here. It bent toward something bigger, toward that industrial zone, a place we had all written off months ago as a dead zone. No supplies, no life. But maybe Danny found something there, or someone. I kept moving. Because whatever he found, it wasn't what he expected. And now I had to find out what the hell it really was. The industrial zone sat like a corpse on the horizon. Twisted metal skeletons of factories rose above the trees, smokestacks with their tops blown off, loading docks strangled by vines. I hadn't seen this place since the early months. We wrote it off after a scout team went missing. No one wanted to risk it again. Too many blind spots, too many shadows, too many dead. But Danny came this way. And now so would I. The road leading in was cracked and overgrown. I passed burned-out delivery trucks and stacks of rotted pallets. The buildings loomed on either side, their windows like black eyes. I kept my machete drawn, I scanning every doorway and rooftop. The silence here wasn't natural. Even the dead avoided this place. I followed the path Danny had marked on his sketch. He'd circled a structure near the back of the zone, Building 16. I passed rusted signs and peeling hazard warnings until I saw the number spray painted on the wall in red. He made it here. And I was about to find out why. The front entrance was chained shut, but someone had already broken through the side. I slipped inside through the gap, boots crunching on broken glass. The interior was dark. My flashlight barely cut through the dust in the air. Machinery stood like tombstones long dead. Pipes hung low. The whole place smelled like rust, oil, and something worse, something sour. And I saw it, fresh footprints in the grime, not just one pair, multiple, some booted, some bare, and drag marks. I followed them. Down a hallway, around a corner, to a heavy door left ajar. Inside was a large room, maybe a break room once. Now it had been cleared out, floor swept, tables lined up, but the thing that froze me was what was on those tables. Medical gear, restraints, IV poles, blood-stained sheets. This was no survivor camp. It was a lab. I stepped closer, heart thudding. A clipboard sat on one of the trays. I picked it up, read the top page. Test Group 7, Early Stage Carriers. The words burned into my brain. They were experimenting on people, trying to learn something from the infected, maybe a cure, maybe control. Either way, they were using people as test subjects. Living or dead didn't seem to matter. That's when I heard it. A voice, muffled, weak. I moved toward the sound. A side room, smaller. The door had no knob, just a keypad lock. The kind you'd use to keep something, or someone, contained. I knocked softly. The voice came again. "Hello? Please, is someone there?" I recognized it. Danny. I backed up, stared at the keypad, and checked around the room. On the desk nearby was a sticky note, half torn and stained. 4 numbers scribbled in black marker. I punched them in. The door clicked. I opened it. He was inside. Thin, pale, one arm bandaged, the other cuffed to a metal rail on the wall. His face was sunken, eyes bloodshot, but he was alive. He looked up, and for a second he didn't recognize me. Then he whispered my name. I rushed to him and unlocked the cuff. He collapsed into me. His body was shaking. I held him up as he caught his breath. "They said it was safe," he mumbled. "Said they were building something new." I believed them. They had food, power, real beds. "Who are they?" I asked. "I don't know. They don't use names. Just codes. They run this place. They take in survivors, and they test them. They gave me something, an injection, said it was a resistance trial." He paused. His face went pale. "I think it was a lie." "What did they do to you?" His voice cracked. "They were trying to create smart ones, infected that listen, that follow commands. They thought maybe the living had something they could twist, change, use." I stared at him. "What happened to the others?" He shook his head. "Dead, or worse. They didn't just turn. They got faster, meaner, smarter. They escaped." My blood ran cold. "How many?" He looked at me with hollow eyes. "All of them." Suddenly I heard it. A sound from the hallway, not groaning, not stumbling, sharp, focused, like something tracking, something hunting. I grabbed Danny, pulled him up. "We're leaving." He nodded, barely able to stand. But it was too late. A shadow moved across the doorway, and I knew we weren't alone anymore. I backed up slowly, keeping Danny behind me. The shadow outside the door paused. Then it moved again, fast, too fast. I gripped my machete, hard hammering. Danny was still weak, could barely stand. Whatever was out there, I'd have to face it alone. Something hit the door. Not a smash, not a random stumble. A test. It was smart enough to know we were inside, smart enough to probe. Another hit, louder this time. The metal door creaked. Then it went quiet. I held my breath. Danny gripped my shoulder. A click. Not from the door. From the hallway. Footsteps. Careful, deliberate, one at a time. I reached for the only thing I could use, a rusted ivy pole. I braced it against the door like a makeshift spear, machete in the other hand. Then it came in. The thing that stepped into the room was wearing a man's face. Mostly. Its body moved like a predator, controlled. Its eyes were cloudy but locked onto mine with awareness. Its mouth opened, but it didn't groan. It grinned. Danny whispered behind me, "That's one of them. One of the new ones." It charged. I swung hard, slashing across its chest. It barely flinched. It grabbed the pole and snapped it in two. I ducked and plunged the machete into its side, twisted, then kicked it back into the hallway. It staggered but didn't fall. We didn't have time. I dragged Danny out of the room. We moved fast, cutting back through the corridor. The thing followed, limping, snarling, but never slowing. The noise drew more. I could hear them now, the others, from deeper in the building. Doors slamming open, scrapes, growls, too many. We reached the main entrance, the chain-ripped hole we'd used to get in. I shoved Danny through first, then followed. The second we hit the lot, I grabbed him and ran. No time to look back. We ducked into an alley between buildings. I found a maintenance ladder and helped him climb to the roof. Just as I pulled myself up, they spilled into the street below. At least 6 of them, maybe more. They weren't wandering, they were searching. Coordinated. They spread out, checking doors, moving in lines, not like any infected I'd seen before. Danny coughed and wiped his face. "You see what they made," he said, breathless. "They wanted control. This is what they got. How did you survive this long?" He looked away. "I didn't, not really. They kept me dozed, said I had potential, but I was failing. I could feel it. The changes. Something in me isn't right." He held up his arm, the one they'd bandaged. The veins were darker than they should be, discolored, twisted. "They didn't just test on me, they tested in me." I didn't want to believe it, but I saw the truth in his eyes. We had to get out, and we had to do it now. I scanned the rooftop. A service bridge ran between this building and another. A narrow metal walkway, rusted but still intact. On the other side was a fire escape. Our way out. We crossed carefully. Danny's steps were shaky, but we made it. Just as we hit the fire escape, I heard metal clanging behind us. One of them had followed us up. I looked back. It wasn't the first one. It was faster. It sprinted across the bridge without hesitation, arms pumping, jaw locked open like a rabid dog. I pushed Danny down the stairs and turned to face it. I waited until it was almost on me. Then I slashed low. It jumped. I ducked, felt claws rip across my jacket. I spun and kicked its knee, heard something snap. It screamed. Not groaned. Screamed. I hacked again, blade sinking into its neck. It thrashed, then fell over the edge. I turned and raced down after Danny. We hit the ground running. I didn't stop until we reached the fence on the edge of the zone. A high chain link wall, barbed at the top. Someone had clipped a hole near the bottom. I shoved Danny through, then followed. We were out. But the howls behind us said they were coming too. We sprinted into the woods. No time to rest. No time to breathe. Just keep going. After what felt like hours, we reached the edge of a ridge. Below us, in the fading light, I saw the silhouette of our camp. Home. But we couldn't go back. Not yet. Not with what we'd seen. Not with what might have followed. I pulled Danny down beside me, both of us gasping. "We have to warn them," he said. "About the smart ones." I nodded. But a cold thought gnawed at the back of my mind. "What if you're changing too?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he looked me in the eyes and said, "If I do, you'll know what to do." Silence stretched between us. Then a noise. Not from behind. From below. Movement in the trees near the camp. Shapes shifting. Shadows watching. We stayed on that ridge until full darkness swallowed the trees. Danny kept drifting in and out, whispering nonsense. His body trembled every few minutes. He was burning up. His skin had gone gray in patches. Whatever they did to him, it was still happening. But I didn't leave him. Not yet. Below, the shapes continued to move, just beyond the perimeter of the camp. Shadows slinking between the trees, stopping just short of the watchlights. Smart enough to avoid open ground. Smart enough to study us before they made a move. I tapped my radio. Static. Of course. The antenna at base only worked in short range now, ever since the last windstorm tore half of it off. I needed to get closer to call it in. But if I left Danny behind, I might never find him again. And I wasn't leaving my brother. So I made a decision. We'd go down together. We moved slow, down the hill, through the brush, every branch crunching underfoot like gunfire. I kept my machete out, other hand on Danny's shoulder. He was weak, staggering more often than not, but he kept moving. He was trying to hold on, for me, for the truth we needed to tell. Halfway to the outer fence, I spotted the first one again. The grinning one. It stood in the trees, half hidden, head tilted like a curious animal, watching. No movement, no charge. Just watching. I didn't stop. I didn't let Danny see it. The moment we cleared the trees and hit the open field near the camp, I heard the call go out. One sharp scream from the woods. Then silence. Then the answer. From all sides. A signal. I shoved Danny toward the gate. It wasn't far, maybe 100 feet. A guard saw us and shouted, swinging the gate open. Then the real horror began. They came out of the tree line like a wave, not shambling, not slow. Running. The kind of speed you only see in people escaping a burning building. Only they weren't running from anything. They were running at us. I turned and fired my pistol once just to slow the closest one. It barely flinched. Open fire, I heard a voice yell from the walls. A second later, the perimeter lit up with muzzle flashes. The gunfire tore into the field. I ducked low and pulled Danny behind a small mound of dirt. He was coughing blood now, eyes unfocused. We're almost there, I told him. He nodded, but it was slow, heavy. He was fading. The first of the infected hit the gate, slamming into the guard who'd opened it. The man didn't even scream, just disappeared beneath claws and teeth. His rifle fell to the ground. I grabbed it. Spun around. Started shooting. One dropped. Then another. But they kept coming. From the wall, someone threw down a smoke charge. It exploded near the gate, covering the field in gray fog. Get them inside, I heard someone yell. Two hands grabbed me, pulling, dragging. Someone else lifted Danny. We were pulled into the gate. The second we crossed, it slammed shut. And the screams got louder. We'd made it back. But we hadn't outrun the storm. The smart ones were here. Inside the camp, chaos erupted. Alarms blared. Survivors scrambled for weapons. People screamed questions. No one had answers. I dropped beside Danny on the dirt. He was barely breathing. I grabbed a med bag from a nearby crate and did what I could. Wrapped him tighter. Cleaned what wounds I could find. Tried to cool his fever with water. His eyes opened. Barely. You have to tell them, he whispered. I will. You have to burn that place down. I nodded. I will. He smiled, then shivered again. I stood rifle in hand and faced the wall. The infected were pushing now, climbing, scratching. They didn't just want in. They knew how to get in. They were testing the weak points. North side, someone shouted. They're breaching. I ran. Others were already there, barricades up, guns pointed, floodlights on. Then one of them climbed over. It wasn't the biggest. It wasn't the fastest. But it was thinking. It hit the ground and rolled, avoiding a burst of bullets. came up swinging, claws out. I shot it in the chest twice. It didn't slow. A younger guard next to me screamed. The thing tackled him, bit into his neck. I swung my machete and hit the creature in the spine. It spasmed and fell. The guard was already dead. The next two were climbing up now. A woman screamed behind me. Another was dragged from a tent. They were inside. More than just a few. Too many. Too smart. Too fast. I grabbed a radio from a dead soldier and shouted into it. Code Black, full breach. We need fire on the compound, now. No answer. Then I heard it. From the ridge behind the camp. A whoosh. Then a boom. The outer barrels, the emergency burn traps. Someone up there had heard me. Fire rolled down the slope like a wave. The infected screamed. Some tried to run. Most burned. I dropped to my knees, shielding my face as the heat blasted through the camp. Everything glowed orange. The sky, the trees, the walls. Ash rained down like snow. When I looked up, most of them were gone. But not all. A few had survived the fire. And one was still grinning. I lifted the rifle, aimed, and put it down. This time it stayed down. For now. Morning came slow, heavy with smoke and silence. The field outside the gate was blackened and scorched. Bodies, what was left of them, lay twisted in the ash. Some still smoldered. The fire had done its job, but it hadn't come without a cost. Inside the camp, we gathered what was left of us. 27 survivors. We started with 48. I knew most of their names, not anymore. Danny was still breathing, barely. We moved him to the infirmary tent. I sat with him through the night. His fever broke just before dawn, but the damage was done. Whatever they put in him, it didn't just hurt him, it changed him. He wasn't turning, not into one of them, but something else, something in between. He told me more once he could speak again, about the labs, about the experiments, about the files they kept locked away. They weren't just trying to cure the virus, they were trying to use it. Control it. Make a version of it that could be aimed like a weapon. They didn't care who died along the way, not even the ones they claimed to be helping. Danny wasn't the only one. There were others. He heard names, faces, locations. And if any of them survived, then this wasn't over. I stood outside the gates that afternoon, staring out at the ruined road we came in on. The sky was gray again, the sun weak behind the clouds. We saved the camp. But the war was just getting started. I looked back toward the infirmary where Danny rested. And I made myself a promise. We'd find the others. We'd burn every lab they built. We'd bring down every last person who thought they could play God with the virus. I wasn't just looking for my brother anymore. I was hunting the people who broke him. I used to think the dead were the real threat. That if you kept your aim steady, your group close, and your feet moving, you'd survive. That was the lie we all clung to. But after what I saw out there, what they did to Danny, what they're planning, I finally understand the truth. The worst monsters don't come out of the grave. They come from inside labs, wearing clean coats and calm faces. They call it research. They call it progress. But all I saw was horror dressed up in science. And now they know someone made it out alive. They'll come looking. Let them. Because I'm not running anymore. I've got names, coordinates, a reason. And if they want to see what happens when you take everything from a man and leave him breathing, then I'll show them. They wanted to create something new. Something stronger. They did. They made me. And I'm coming.